Here are 10 tips I wish I knew before I started buying at Pokemon card shows. So in one of my recent videos, I did 10 top tips for vendors vending at Pokemon card shows, but due to popular demand, that sounds so arrogant, but due to a few people asking for a buyer's version instead. And this side, I am actually a lot more experienced in compared to the vendor side. I was kind of new myself and everything like that as well. But for the buying side, I can actually say that I do know probably a bit more than I do when it comes to vending. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you my 10 top tips for buying at Pokemon card shows. Whether you're brand new or whether you're just learning, all these tips are for everyone. Number 1, preparation. So first of all, you might be thinking, okay, what do I want to go and buy? So that's kind of a good idea to start with. Before you go into the show, just having a rough idea of the sort of things you want to go looking for. Obviously, if you're trying to do a master set, then you'll be going for those specific cards. If you're trying to buy a particular artist that you really like, then you'll be looking for those sort of cards. So it's kind of very subjective on what you want to look for. But it's also completely absolutely fine if you just want to go in and browse. I'm often like that as well. I don't really go in with a particular thing in mind. I just go in thinking, I want to have a little look what's there, see what takes my fancy and stuff like that. But what I would say is that if you are hunting down particular cards, then I would have a rough idea at the price in your head that you're kind of aiming at and you know you would like to go for. And this is more for the bigger cards especially, like say if you're trying to master set Prismatic Evolutions, I would go in mind with roughly the sort of prices you want to be at near sort of thing, paying for those big Moonbryons and every other evolution. And when you first get there, I would prioritize trying to go for the bigger cards, because a lot of people have been asking about like prioritizing things and stuff like that. How do you prioritize things? One thing I would say is definitely try and go for the bigger cards that you know are very popular, because as the day goes on, they will be swiped away and they will be gone. So when you go and ask a vendor, oh, have you got this and that? They'll be like, oh, sorry, I had it earlier, but it's gone. So I would definitely say that if you're looking for a particular card that you know is pretty popular, you know it's pretty hot right now, try and hunt that down early on in the day. And then when it comes to storage, how do you store things when you're at a Pokemon card show? Personally, since day one, I don't know why I started doing this. I didn't see it anywhere else. I just did it. I brought an empty ETB with me every single time because it's obviously a very solid box. You know that everything that goes in there is going to stay in there. Even if it moves around a bit, it's going to be like pretty firm in there either way, either like orientation that you do it. Some people obviously bring a whole entire binder with them. If they're trying to do a master set, then they just want to bring the whole entire binder, which is completely fair enough. I personally haven't done that because I don't like lugging it around. I like having my arms free, which also is why I'd recommend bringing a backpack, because it's a lot easier to have a backpack on you so that you don't have to have your arms kind of like holding. If you've got like a tote bag on, then you kind of have to like hold it with one arm and flick with one arm. I prefer having both my hands free, just obviously just personal and anything like that, but I would highly recommend using a backpack. A little deck box is also a good idea, kind of similar to an ETB sort of thing, just it keeps you having a nice amount of like room to be able to bring some singles home. And also some people bring like full-on slab cases if they're looking to trade or sell a bunch of their stuff. Now of course this doesn't apply to everyone, but I would actually highly recommend also bringing a portable charger with you, because there will be probably quite a lot of the time where you want to be on your phone, condition checking, price checking, everything like that as well. So I would highly recommend bringing a portable charger with you. Make sure to also double check about parking as well, because sometimes at these venues they don't have necessarily parking on site. So obviously if you are someone who has like accessible needs sort of thing, then it's a good idea to have a double check just before you set off, just thinking about parking and stuff like that. But most places do have really good parking because they're in like sports leisure centers sort of thing. Budgeting. Now this is obviously a massive topic when it comes to Pokemon card shows, because there's a lot of temptation in front of you. I trust you, don't trust me. When you walk in there, you'll be like, okay, I know exactly what I want to go and buy. I'm going to go buy that. When you start flicking those binders, that little voice in the back of your brain's going, go on then, buy that one, go on then. And of course, it's absolutely fine. I will be getting onto that in a moment and another point, but there's obviously, you need to set yourself some limits. Especially if you're planning on going to multiple shows, then you need to be able to, or even like a weekend show that has multiple days on it, you need to make sure that you're not spending too much too quickly. So I'd highly recommend, if you're just purely using your bank account, then obviously checking throughout the day is quite good, because sometimes you don't quite realize, I've been guilty of this as well, that you buy like £10 here, £20 there, £3 here, it mounts up pretty quickly. So I would highly recommend checking throughout the day. But also on that note, I would highly recommend bringing cash, because again, I'll get more in depth on that later, but a lot of vendors like dealing in cash more, and it's also a good way to get rid of cash, because nowadays most places are contactless, but at card shows, people love cash. And one of the requests I had was talking about what sort of budget you should bring, and honestly, I know it's a bit of a cop-out answer, but I can't really say that for you, because I don't know your financial situation. So obviously everyone's completely different. You could go to a card show and set a £50 budget and you just pick up some really nice cute cards and really or just one card that you know you really want to go and get for your master set. That's perfectly fine. But obviously someone else who might have really wealthy background, they can go and think, oh yeah, I'm gonna spend 1k every single time I go to a card show. So it's completely subjective. But I remember the first time I went to a card show, which was Cardiff back in whenever that was, last year sometime. That was my first ever card show. I set myself a £200 budget. So that was a nice amount for a first time show, I'd say. Restriction versus openness. So this one obviously goes hand in hand with the budget discussion, which I was talking about before, but I wanted to put some emphasis on this. Because a lot of people, when they're talking about things when they're going to card shows, they do often say be strict on yourself, don't be tempted too much and stuff like that. And don't be, that's not what I'm trying to say here. But there is a difference and there is a line that you should be able to try and balance. Obviously go in with an idea of what you want to buy, because then that puts your priorities there. We've already talked about that, but don't completely cut yourself off. If you're flicking through a binder and you see a card that you really like, just buy it, honestly, because it will be so much worse if you get home and you think that you've been way too strict on yourself and you're like, oh, I really wish I picked up this or that, and then you go to another show and you just can't find the card again. So I would highly recommend being in the moment as much as you can, obviously staying in budget, but being in the moment as much as you can. Take your time. So once you're actually in the card show at this point, it is obviously quite a hectic place some of the times. Most card shows, especially because the hobby is in such a big boom right now, most card shows are pretty packed. And so obviously when you're there at a table, you'd be looking through your own binder and stuff like that, and you may feel this pressure, there's people kind of surrounding you because they want to get on that binder as well. But realistically, you would have waited your turn as well to get onto that binder, and so other people can wait as well. And other people don't mind waiting as well, because everyone knows the whole situation is quite big right now, so everyone knows that when you're going to a table, going to a show, you're gonna have to do a little bit of waiting. So make sure that you take your time when you get to the table and just have a look through. Make sure you spend time looking through it, condition check, which I'll get onto soon, and look through everything you want to look through without feeling the pressure of anyone trying to make you move on. Condition checking. Now this is quite a big one, which I had quite a few requests to talk about, so hopefully this is good for you guys. But obviously condition checking is a massive part of this hobby because collectors do want to get those minty cards. And the extent to which you condition check is also very personal, and I can't really decide for you on how strict you should be, because it's very much on what you're going to condition check for, basically. Because if you're going to go and look for a card that you want to grade for the higher end ones, I would highly recommend spending more time condition checking. But if you're purely going for a personal pickup, not to resell, just for the binder, then obviously have a quick condition check, because you don't want to take home a bunch of rubbish, especially for the wrong price. But it's not as strict. Don't be as strict on yourself. The first thing I will say is that if the card sleeve that you want to condition check has an opaque back on it, because a lot of the ones, especially if you buy sleeves from an ETB, the backing is obviously got an artwork or anything like that. Before you condition check, always make sure to ask the vendor, is it alright if I take the card out of the sleeve? Because obviously if it's got a clear backing on it, you can just look at it through the back of the actual sleeve itself. But if it's got an opaque coloured backing sort of thing, then make sure you ask the vendor first, because it's just polite. And now as for what to look for, the first thing obviously is going to be whitening, which is obviously the first thing that anyone ever talks about. But on the front and back, especially the corners is what I would say most to look out for, especially on the back, because the front is kind of obvious and apparent if there's something like little denting, which whitening's not as obvious on the front, but definitely on the back, because obviously it has the blue outer rim. If it's English, obviously it's got gold if it's Japanese, but you can still see it very easily. On the corners, I would definitely look at that. That's what my eyes instantly go to first, is checking all four corners if there's any whitening. And then similar to that is also edge wear, because that's kind of harder to see compared to the corners, but just make sure you kind of tilt it a little bit every now and then, just to make sure the actual edges of the card, especially on the back, because this back sometimes easier to see, which can then obviously reflects on the front as well, because the edge is the same on the front and the back. Then yeah, obviously there can be quite a bit of whitening on there sometimes if you don't look carefully. So I would definitely look at that as well. If it's a vintage card, obviously have a look at the holo. If it's scratched at all, if you're gonna try and make it into a gradable card, then obviously you need to check that, because that is definitely something that's scrutinized when it comes to grading. So definitely try and tilt it in different angles, different directions. And the same thing comes along with denting as well, because some cards can have dents or creases in them, and again, tilting them in different lighting will also just allow you to be able to see those sort of dents on the front and the back more easily. And obviously centering is obviously something that's very much dependent on what you're going for. If you want to try and grade it, then obviously that is more important. And PSA and ACE and everything like that, all the big ones, they kind of change a lot about how lenient they are. But obviously, if you're going to try and go for those 10s, then obviously you want it to be as bang on as possible. But I would like try and go for at least like a 70-30%. And that basically means, so I just got a basic energy card here for you to basically use it as an example. When I say 70-30, when you look at the borders over here, if one side is shifted more that way and one's like more smaller on that side, obviously that's going to be quite off center. But if it's at least like 70% versus 30% rather than 50-50, that is probably a better pickup. If it's anything more than that, then that's obviously you would try and look for 60-40, so it's pretty much bang on, like nearly 50-50, but 70-30 is also a good enough pickup. If you want me to explain that anymore, then please let me know down in the comments below. I'll try and make a little short on it, anything like that. I'm kind of just doing this off the whim. I just grab those energies out of nowhere. So if you want me to explain that a little bit more, then I will do. And then a few tips on sealed items as well, because someone asked about that, about how to try and make sure everything's okay for sealed products. Obviously there's a lot of issues with resealing. So number one is to ask the vendor where they got it from originally, especially if it's vintage. Then you can always ask them where they got it from, and you know, if they believe it's reliable and everything like that, which it should be if they're selling it. And then this is mainly just about like loose packs on their own sort of thing, but check the looseness of the pack, because the cards should be pretty tight in there. So the actual pack, if there's a lot of wiggle room on the outside, that's kind of a bad sign. If there's glue residue, that's a bad sign that's been resealed. And then make sure as well when you open a pack that the top and bottom are still stuck down. So when you lift up the little flap, then those bits on the side should still kind of be stuck down a bit before you actually lift them up properly. Again, I could make a proper little short on this if you want more details on this, but this is just for a rough guide for this video. Talk to people. Now, I know this is probably the most daunting part of going to a Pokemon card show in the first place for a lot of people. And it was for me too when I was going to my first one as well, because I knew no one in this hobby. I had absolutely no friends in the Pokemon card collecting hobby. But talk to vendors, because they're all really, really friendly. This community is so friendly. So honestly, talk to the vendors. Even if you want to have a chat about anything, or if you have any specific questions, they're there to help you. So make sure to ask some questions if you have any. And that includes if there is a high-end card or a slab in a cabinet, in a locked cabinet, then make sure to ask them to get out and have a little condition check, because they want to be able to do that for you. And also try and talk to some buyers around you. That's probably a little bit more daunting. That doesn't mean you have to like walk up to everyone and just be like, hi, like that is not sort of like thing I mean, but just if you're at a table with someone, you both happen to be flicking through, and then they're having a discussion with someone, with the vendor even maybe, then just try and join a little bit, try and just get a little bit chummy sort of thing. But obviously it's really hard. I know, I completely get that, because I mean, on camera, I'm talking like this, I'm talking animated. I struggle a little bit with like doing that sort of talking in the first place. So, but you know what I mean? I'm not saying that it's going to be the easiest thing ever, but when you get in there, then it's really nice to build that rapport with people, especially because as you build that rapport with people more and more over time, and you go and you buy more and you chat to the vendors more, they'll probably be more lenient when it comes to being able to give you discounts. Binder etiquette. Now, personally, this is a big one for me, because I don't know why, but I find it highly irritating when people do not have good binder etiquette with certain things. Obviously, if you're brand new, that's completely fine, but then there's certain things that people do that I'm a bit like, okay, right, let's get it out there. Let's get what the do's and don'ts are out there. So the first one I have to say is that if someone is in front of a binder and they look like they're still going through some things, if they're just quickly condition checking something, then do not start flicking through their binder. I made a short about this when I went to MCM Comic Con, because I thought it was very funny that when I was doing that, I literally was stood in front of a binder, quickly condition checking something, and this guy was stood next to me and flicked through the whole rest of the binder, and I was like, cheers, buddy. So again, that kind of goes in hand with the waiting your turn sort of thing. Just make sure that if someone looks like they're in front of a binder, then just wait for them to be done. You can obviously, of course, ask, oh, are you finished with looking at this binder sort of thing. Asking is not rude. Asking is a good thing. We want to be able to ask people, but just don't assume that they're done. And then when you're done with looking through a certain binder, make sure to either move out of the way and then just so that other people can get onto it, or at least have a look around you to see, is there anyone waiting to get on this binder whilst you're waiting to talk to the vendor about buying any cards. When you get to the end of a binder, so if you've gone from the start all the way to the end, it's just polite to like flick it back to the front so that the vendors don't have to bend over the table and do it for you, because most people, including myself, put like their best cards towards the front so that people, when they come across their table, they see those best cards first. When you're flicking through a binder, don't let pages slap down sort of thing, like gently put them down, because obviously this is people's money that have invested into this, so make sure to just gently you know, binder flick at a nice pace. You don't have to rush, you don't have to do anything, and just don't, make sure to just put them down nicely rather than letting them like slap down sort of thing. And also don't be afraid to walk away and not buy anything. When you get to the end of a binder and you go, there's not really anything here that I want to buy, that's completely fine. There are so many vendors around the entire show, so make sure to just not feel the pressure to have to buy something. Overstimulation. Now, I've had a lot of people also talking to me about the fact that they find card shows just too daunting because there's just too many people, they don't even know where to begin. And the first thing I want to say is that you're really, really not alone. When you're at a card show, you can always come in and out. There's never anything that like, oh, once you're in, you have to stay in until you're done and then you can go out. Once you're in, you have your ticket scanned, whatever. Sometimes you have a lanyard, sometimes you have a stamp on your hand. Some people don't even do anything like that. They just kind of assume sort of thing. But you can always come in and out. And I think pretty much 99% of the time, I don't think I've actually been to a card show where there's not a little trade zone. So that's basically just a little zone with a bunch of tables and chairs. So you can just sit at, and you don't actually have to trade in there if you don't want to. A lot of people just eat their lunch there sort of thing. So you can just have a little moment to just like be in your own space and not feel like you're in the middle of the crowd of people. And make sure to start with some of these smaller tables. You know, there's quite often, I like to think of it as like, I mean, I'm a big gamer myself, so I like to think of it as like, go to some of the indie tables. So if that doesn't make any sense to you, then sorry. But basically go to some of the tables that are some of the, indie tables versus AAA tables. If you're a gamer, you'll get what I mean when I say that. But basically, just go to some of the tables that are, look smaller, look like they have just maybe one table, couple of binders, couple of sealed bits, just because you know that those sort of people are going to probably be more personable with you, and also because they're newer sort of thing maybe, and also there's not going to be crowds and crowds of people around this one table if they don't have loads on their table in the first place. Obviously, some of the bigger names have tons of binders, and also because they're bigger names, they have a lot more people coming around them, so make sure to just kind of build your confidence up to go and see them. Trading. So when you go to a card show, you might be thinking it's a good idea that's going to be a place for you to sell a bunch of your cards. But when you go, I would again, like prioritizing other things, have an idea in your head about what sort of value you'd be happy with trading at for your specific card. Most vendors will be at around 70 to 80% when they're doing trades, sometimes 90. But the percentage will depend on what you're offering. And by that, I mean, if you're offering a really, really high value liquid card, which is basically a card that they know that the vendors can sell again very quickly, they will offer you a much higher percentage. If you're offering a bunch of really common cards, a bunch of EXs sort of thing, they'll offer you a lot less money for that because they know that it will take a lot longer to sell again. Don't be afraid to try and negotiate a little bit because obviously it's your cards that you're trying to let go of, so don't be afraid to have a little bit of like a back and forth sort of thing. But remember, at the end of the day, this is a business they're trying to run, so you can't obviously be trying to get them like as low as possible without them having a good outcome in the end for their business. Also, if you go to a vendor and say, I would like to do you guys do trade sort of thing, then if they ask you, like I will do every time, is do you want to trade towards something or do you want some cash back? All that basically means is that, do you want to trade some of your cards so that you can buy one of my cards, or do you just want to get some cash back? And having an idea in mind before you ask if they trade is often quite useful, because that means that the vendor can then say, do you want to have something to match the value of what you're trying to buy at my table, or do you want to just have or do you want me to just have a look at anything that I'd be interested in and I could just pay you back any extra? So I would highly recommend having a look at the table first, having a look at all the cards, and then if there's something you want to buy from their table, then saying, do you do trades sort of thing? And then even if you don't want to buy anything, then say also, do you do trades? And then you can instantly just say, oh no, I'm just looking for some cash back, rather than saying, no, I think I might be going towards something. Also, because a lot of vendors also do a different percentage depending on what your answer is, because sometimes if a vendor is asking you if you just want some cash back, they'll offer 70%, versus if you want to trade towards something that they've already got in their own stock, they'll offer 80%, because obviously they know that they're going to try and just instantly just swap card for card rather than losing money. Purchasing. Now, vendors are fully expecting buyers to ask for a little bit of price off, so I know it may be quite daunting to think that, oh, I'm being rude or anything like that, but they're pretty much expecting it. They can obviously say no, but there is always point in asking. Depending on how much you buy and what you buy will be dependent on how much you can probably ask off for a reduction. A general kind of rule that a lot of vendors go by is that if you ask, then they will do, like, at most a lot of the time, they will do 10% off, because say if they bought a card for 80%, then obviously if they do 10% off, that's then selling it back to you for 90%, so they need to make a little bit of profit on it. But again, that is very dependent on what you are buying and how much you are buying. As I was alluding to earlier, a lot of vendors are also more lenient when it comes to cash because using a card machine takes a percentage off the overall price that you're actually paying for the card. So if you want to be asking for a bigger discount, then I would definitely recommend bringing cash with you. Now, building confidence is obviously a massive thing because it is quite daunting to be able to ask for it. I remember when I started out, I didn't ask instantly because it's just a really scary thing to do. So I'd highly recommend starting off with like smaller reduction sort of thing, asking for £1 off here or there sort of thing, just a few little ones. And or another way you could do it is by asking if you give them a card saying, oh, will you do a little deal for me? And if they then say, okay, how much were you thinking? Then you can basically just explain, oh, this is my first time, so I was hoping you could maybe like, you know, help me out sort of thing. Just something like that. So you're kind of putting it in their hands a little bit. And then obviously if you're saying it's your first time as well, then they'll be a lot more happy to help out with you. And there you have it. Those are my 10 top tips on being a buyer at a Pokemon card show. Now, obviously, I'm kind of just scratching the surface with a lot of these things because there is so much more in depth to go on. So if you do want a part 2 or if you do want a more in-depth analysis on different things, then let me know in the comments down below. I can also do shorts on different things as well because I know sometimes people prefer that sort of thing, like a condensed, chopped down version of sort of things. So let me know in the comments down below if you do want any more information or have any more questions, because honestly, I love answering questions. I love helping out people. I want more people to get into the hobby because I always say that to people. I know a lot of people say it's really scary to go to a card show, and I completely get that, but once you go, you will be hooked. It's so fun. It's so fun, honestly. But for now, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please make sure to, as always, like, subscribe, share around, all that good stuff. It's really useful, so please make sure you do that if you did like it. And a huge thank you to my greatest slab to members of my YouTube channel, of course, being Pokey Swamper, TechPunk Ash, and Willow Collects TCG. Thank you so much for your support on my channel. It means so much to me. But for now, I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!